In November 2008, something happened in Zimbabwe that sounds mathematically impossible. Prices were doubling every single day, not every week, not every month, every 24 hours. If you woke up with $1 million in your pocket, by the next morning, it was worthless. At the peak, Zimbabwe's inflation rate hit 79.6 billion% per month. That's not a typo. Billion. With a B, the government printed a $100 trillion banknote, the highest denomination ever issued by any country in history. And it couldn't buy a bus fare. People used cash as wallpaper because it was literally cheaper than buying actual wallpaper. This wasn't some ancient economic disaster from a textbook. This happened in 2008, just 16 years ago. And what's terrifying is that it took only 9 years to go from a functioning economy, Zimbabwe was called the breadbasket of Africa, to complete currency collapse. 9 years from stability to hyperinflation, so severe that the entire currency had to be abandoned. The scariest part? The exact same pattern is happening right now in other countries. Venezuela, Turkey, Argentina. The mechanism is identical. The warning signs are the same. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop. Hey, I'm Brandon, and welcome back to My Money Mint, the channel where I dive into topics related to money and wealth. All right, let's get into it. To understand how Zimbabwe's currency collapsed so catastrophically, you need to understand where it started. At independence in 1980, Zimbabwe had a well-developed, diversified economy. Strong mining and manufacturing sectors, good social services, and effective civil service. The manufacturing sector contributed 25% to GDP and was second only to South Africa's in sub-Saharan Africa. Zimbabwe was a significant agricultural producer. While the breadbasket of Africa label is somewhat overstated, Zimbabwe was self-sufficient in food production and a net exporter of maize in most years. It contributed about 5 to 6% of Africa's total maize production. By 2001, it was the world's sixth largest tobacco producer. Horticulture production more than doubled during the 1990s. The economy grew steadily through the 1980s and 1990s. GDP increased from $9 billion in 1980 to $14 billion in 1990 to $17 billion by 1999. GDP per capita peaked at $2,930 in 1998. Government spending on education nearly tripled between 1979 and 1989-1990. Healthcare spending tripled. Things were improving, but there was a massive underlying problem: land ownership. At independence, about 4,500 white farmers controlled 50 to 70% of Zimbabwe's arable land. The white population was less than 1% of the total. This racial disparity in land ownership created enormous political tension. The government attempted gradual land reform through willing buyer, willing seller programs. From 1980 to 1999, but it moved slowly, only transferring about 20% of white-owned land over 20 years. Then came February 2000. President Robert Mugabe, who had ruled Zimbabwe since independence, proposed a constitutional amendment allowing the government to seize land without compensation. The referendum was defeated 55 to 45 despite vast government support in media. This was Mugabe's first significant political loss. The opposition movement for democratic change had successfully organized against him for the first time. Mugabe's response was immediate and catastrophic. On February 26th and 27th, 2000, immediately after the referendum defeat, pro-Mugabe war veterans organized farm invasions. This became the fast-track land reform program. More than 5,000 to 6,000 white-owned commercial farms were seized. The first wave alone seized 110,000 square kilometers. The seizures were often violent, accompanied by killings. White farmers were murdered during occupations. Farm workers were assaulted. By 2013, every white-owned farm had been expropriated or confirmed for redistribution. White farmers decreased from about 4,500 to around 200. This happened in just over a decade. But here's the critical problem: the land didn't go to experienced farmers. Officially, it was divided into small plots for poor farmers and larger commercial farms for skilled farmers. The reality? About 2,200 well-connected political elites controlled nearly 40% of the 14 million hectares seized. Government officials, ZANU-PF loyalists, ruling party members, judges, army commanders, cabinet ministers. Many recipients had no experience or training in agriculture. They were inexperienced or uninterested in farming. They failed to maintain the labor-intensive, highly efficient management of previous owners. Many farms fell into disrepair or were underutilized. New farmers lacked access to credit, equipment, seeds, fertilizer, or cash to operate properly. The agricultural collapse was catastrophic. Food production fell 45% from 1999 to 2009. Maize production, the staple food, declined 31% during 2002 to 2012. Tobacco production, Zimbabwe's largest agricultural export, collapsed to less than one-third of 2000 levels by 2005. By 2004, Zimbabwe officially entered famine conditions. In 2001, Zimbabwe had a trade surplus of $322 million. By 2002, it had a trade deficit of $18 million, a $340 million swing in 1 year. Zimbabwe turned from net food exporter to net food importer. The country that once fed itself now couldn't feed its own people. The agricultural collapse triggered an economic chain reaction. Food processing companies closed. Agricultural exporters shut down. Related industries, fertilizer, equipment, transport, collapsed. Over 700 companies had closed by the end of 2001. Industrial production declined 10.5% in 2001 and 17.5% in 2002-2002. Between 1999 and 2008, Zimbabwe's GDP shrank by 54%, nearly half. This was the most severe economic downturn in a country not at war in recorded history. GDP collapsed from approximately $17 billion in 2000 and $9 billion in 2008. GDP per capita fell from $2,930 in 1998 to $1,350 in 1998. 2008, a 50% decline in just 10 years. By the end of 2008, GDP per capita had fallen to levels last seen in 1952, a 56-year regression. Manufacturing output collapsed between 2000 and 2008. Unemployment officially reached 80 to 94%. By 2007, 8 out of 10 Zimbabweans had no formal employment. The formal economy nearly disappeared. Most people worked in the informal sector, trading, subsistence farming, street vending, but stable employment for which the economy was designed collapsed entirely. And here's where the hyperinflation story begins. The government faced a fiscal crisis. Tax collection failed because the economy collapsed. Most economic activity moved to the informal sector. People conducted cash-based transactions to avoid formal banking and tax systems. The currency became worthless, so tax revenue in Zimbabwean dollars became useless immediately. The civil service capacity deteriorated. Most transactions occurred in foreign currency, off the books, but the government still had massive unfunded obligations: salaries, pensions, military spending, debt service. Mugabe needed cash to bribe enemies, reward political allies, maintain security forces, and keep the military and police loyal. In 1997 to 1998, he paid war veterans 4 billion Zimbabwean dollars. From 1998 onward, he sent Zimbabwe's army to the Democratic Republic of Congo to protect personal investments, a massive drain on resources. The government had three options: cut spending, politically impossible because Mugabe needed the military's loyalty; raise taxes, economically impossible because the formal economy had collapsed; or print money, politically easiest and providing infinite supply. Mugabe chose to print. He literally said, "Where money for projects has not been found, we will print it." Money printing was his solution, not the problem. This was catastrophic economic policy, but it was the path of least political resistance. And so the spiral began. In 2000, inflation was 55% annually. By 2001, 100%. Prices doubled yearly. By 2002, 200%. By 2003, 600%. By 2005, over 1,000%. Prices rose tenfold yearly. In 2005, toilet paper cost 417 Zimbabwean dollars per sheet. Not per roll, per sheet. The government tried everything except stopping the printing. In 2007, they declared inflation illegal. Price increases became an arrestable offense. Police could arrest shopkeepers for raising prices. This created immediate shortages. Businesses couldn't sustain selling below cost. Stores stopped stocking goods. Empty shelves appeared everywhere. Black markets flourished. The policy made the situation worse. The government tried currency redenominations, removing zeros from the currency. In August 2006, they removed 3 zeros. 1 million became 1,000 in new currency. In July 2008, they removed 10 zeros. 10 billion became 1. In February 2009, they removed 12 more zeros. Together, 3 redenominations reduced the currency's value by 10 to the 25th power. But redenominations addressed the symptom, not the cause. Without stopping money printing, new denominations inflated just as quickly. Prices immediately resumed rising. It was equivalent to rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. By 2007, Zimbabwe officially entered hyperinflation territory, defined as 50% or more inflation per month. In July 2007, the Reserve Bank stopped publishing official inflation statistics to hide the true crisis. By June 2008, the annual rate of price growth was 11.2 million%. By September 2008, 489 billion%. By November 2008, the peak monthly inflation rate hit 79.6 billion% per month. Let me put that in perspective. At peak, Zimbabwe had 98% daily inflation. Prices doubled every 24.7 hours. If you received your salary in the morning, say 1 trillion Zimbabwean dollars, by noon it would buy half as much. By evening, a quarter as much. By the next morning, it was worthless. In mid-November 2008, year-over-year inflation reached 89.7 sextillion%. That's 89.7 with 21 zeros after it. This was the second highest hyperinflation in world history, exceeded only by Hungary's 1946 hyperinflation, where prices doubled every 15 hours. The prices themselves became surreal. By 2008, bread cost 550 million Zimbabwean dollars at regular markets, or 10 billion on the black market. By January 2009, a loaf of bread cost 300 billion Zimbabwean dollars. 10 years earlier, that amount could have bought a house. By mid-2008, just 3 eggs cost 100 billion Zimbabwean dollars. The exchange rate at peak was incomprehensible. In November 2008, $1 equaled approximately 2.6 decillion Zimbabwean dollars. That's 26 with 32 zeros after it, a number so large you can't even comprehend it. And then came the $100 trillion note in January 2009, one followed by 14 zeros. This holds the record as the highest denomination banknote ever officially issued by any country in history. At the time of issue, it could not buy a simple bus fare. It could buy about 2 loaves of bread or 3 eggs. The note was more valuable as paper than as currency. People literally used it as wallpaper. An exiled newspaper called the Zimbabwean printed advertisements directly onto $100 trillion notes with slogans like, "It's cheaper to print," "This on money than paper," and "Thanks to Mugabe, this money is wallpaper." This wasn't satire, it was reality. Daily life became dystopian. People needed wheelbarrows, suitcases, or bags of cash to buy basic groceries. Single purchases required billions or trillions in notes. Carrying money became physically difficult. Prices changed multiple times per day: morning, midday, evening. Shopkeepers adjusted prices during customers' shopping trips. Salaries became worthless by payday. Teachers and civil servants paid trillions monthly could buy almost nothing, maybe equivalent to 1 or 2 US dollars. People raced to spend wages immediately, or the value evaporated overnight. Formal retail couldn't function. Barter became necessary, direct exchange of goods. Landlords demanded rent paid in food because they couldn't trust currency. Foreign currency black markets thrived. US dollars, South African rands, other currencies. People increasingly refused Zimbabwean dollars entirely. The brain drain was massive. Professionals fled: doctors, engineers, teachers, accountants, managers. Emigration surged from 6% of the population in 2005 to 9.9% in 2010. Destinations were mostly South Africa and Botswana. The country lost its skilled workers, medical professionals, technical expertise. Infrastructure decayed. Water systems, electricity generation, roads, healthcare facilities, schools, communications, maintenance halted. The government had no revenue. Private investment fled. The technical expertise to maintain systems left the country. By 2008, about 1/3 of the population was food insecure according to the UN World Food Program. 45% were considered malnourished. A cholera outbreak infected thousands and a sign of state failure. Life expectancy dropped significantly. Everything the government tried failed, except one thing. In January 2009, Finance Minister Patrick Chinamasa lifted restrictions on using foreign currencies. Zimbabwe allowed use of the US dollar, euro, South African rand, and other currencies. In April 2009, they stopped printing Zimbabwean dollars entirely. This worked. Immediately, removing the government's ability to print uncontrollably stabilized prices. Stable foreign currencies couldn't be devalued by Mugabe. Inflation dropped significantly, prices stabilized. The economy regained basic functionality. The currency crisis resolved, though economic damage remained. The solution required abandoning the national currency. Zimbabwe became dependent on foreign money. They lost monetary sovereignty, but they regained economic stability. From 2000 to 2009, just 9 years, Zimbabwe went from a functioning economy to complete currency collapse. This represents one of the fastest transitions from stability to hyperinflation in modern history. The pattern demonstrates how quickly wrong policies can destroy an economy. And here's what's terrifying. This pattern is universal. Venezuela experienced the same thing from 2016 to present. Oil revenue collapsed, government printed money, hyperinflation followed, currency abandoned, millions emigrated. Turkey in 2023 to 2024 shows early warning signs. Central bank printing under political pressure, inflation above 60%, currency depreciating rapidly. Argentina in 2023 to 2024 hit inflation above 250% annualized, with chronic currency instability and dollarization. The 7-stage pattern repeats every time. Stage 1, government fiscal crisis, where they can collect taxes. Stage 2, government prints money to cover deficit. Stage 3, inflation accelerates. Stage 4, government prints more to compensate. Stage 5, vicious spiral where more printing causes more inflation causes more printing. Stage 6, confidence collapse where people refuse the currency entirely. Stage 7, currency abandonment through adopting foreign money or backing currency with hard assets. Zimbabwe teaches us that hyperinflation is a monetary phenomenon caused by printing money faster than goods are produced. It's a political choice. Governments choose printing over spending cuts because it's politically easier. Once started, it's almost impossible to stop before total collapse. Fiat currency requires confidence. Without trust, currency becomes worthless paper. And the real consequences, job loss, poverty, brain drain, infrastructure decay, persist long after inflation ends. Zimbabwe went from breadbasket to basket case in less than a decade. In 2008, they experienced the fastest currency collapse in modern history. And the most disturbing lesson? It can happen anywhere. The mechanism is the same. The warning signs are identical. And once the printing starts, stopping requires political will that most governments lack until the system completely breaks. Thank you for watching My Money Mint. If this story of economic collapse and currency destruction got you thinking about monetary policy and the dangers of money printing, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Do you see similar warning signs in any economies today? I'll see you in the next one.